Fairmont Crest shook like a massive body awakened by a bolt of lightning to the heart. As news of Doug's sudden death spread through the stone porches, cold steps, and mirrored windows. The car accident was framed as an unexpected tragedy, but cracks in the narrative appeared early, like broken mirrors hidden behind curtains. Vanessa, lost in her first hours of pain and self-recrimination, realized her unease was not due to simple loss but to the scent of a conspiracy still simmering amid the bland condolences. The pain turned to anger as she retraced the last few days, seeing clearly the chains that had been laid to conceal the hand of Joey Armstrong, who had mastered the art of twisting the truth and washing his hands with anonymous contracts. The name Marcel Malone emerges like a silent blade, a detective infected with the scent of power, a filth for hire with a veneer of legitimacy, a man paid to make the impossible a fait accompli. As the investigation unfolds, Marcel's fingerprints appear on the edges of time, and Joey's shadow looms over the entire scene, as if he not only controls guilt, but also the breathing of the weak who cling to him. Vanessa is forced to look herself in the mirror and the uncomfortable question of personal responsibility, because the day Doug died did not pass in silence. It was cut deep by a brief but decisive encounter with the man she had tried to bury in the past. The moral burden refuses to stand still. On the one hand, she is a victim of plays written from the dark side. On the other, she has stepped onto that stage with her own feet, if only to negotiate a way out for her family from the pressure of secrecy. No excuse could soften the image of the clock hands closing in on a fateful moment, because when a mother knows that her presence, however misled, has added another grain of sand to the whirlwind that has torn her family apart, the anger no longer turns outward but turns inward. The line between accomplice and victim blurs in the rustle of papers and leaked recordings, making every step she takes resonate heavily in the tense atmosphere. Marcel is about to be arrested, like a door about to swing open to reveal a back room where Joey's strings are stretched taut like a bowstring. Vanessa understands that the moment the handcuffs close around Marcel's wrists is also the moment Joey's secrets are at risk of being pulled into the light, and the moment her family is forced to hear the harshest truth, that the day Doug died, she was not exactly alone before the walls of Fairmont Crest. The greatest fear comes not from the police or the press, but from the eyes of the children who will return, from the unspoken but penetrating questions. Can a mother love and wound her own family? Can a moment of weakness become the defining evidence of her entire being? The heat surrounding Doug's mysterious death flares like a forge, casting a shadow over the past everyone has tried to build. Doug is the center of gravity, a man with both the charisma of a leader and the darkness everyone feels but no one dares to name. The marriage to Vanessa is not a rosy story. It is a pact between love, power, the desire for security, and the need to be recognized. The twins Darnell and Deanna are the marginalized witnesses, rarely seen clearly in public, and it is their absence that makes them the biggest void in the family picture. When news of Doug's death was officially announced, the anticipation of their return was like a hushed storm. Darnell returned first, without fanfare, carrying the quiet air of a man who had tasted more truth than his years allowed. He did not turn to his mother for comfort. He turned to the darkness to break it, and in the process, forced himself to become a black mirror reflecting all that people wanted to sweep under the carpet. Darnell's presence not only unsettled Vanessa but also touched the ambitions of Doug's brother, Marcus, who had grown accustomed to viewing the family as a chessboard and had tried to memorize the positions of all the possible replacement pieces. This return was not a ceremonial visit. It brought with it a trove of files, letters, hastily torn diaries with their edges still stuck to them, and half-hearted confessions from secret rendezvous in the past. Darnell picked up on the strange rhythms in Doug's last few deals, the mismatched contracts, the legitimate invoices that obscured the flow of money, the audit reports with some subtle number manipulations. Every detail revealed a link to Marcel, and behind Marcel, Joey, with his faceless but purposeful recordings. Darnell stood in his father's old offices, touching the cold wood where Doug had typed his decisions, and felt the presence of a man alone in an empire he had built but surrounded by loyalists calling his name while silently pulling out the table legs. Vanessa, meanwhile, had to divide her energy between cooperating with the investigation and preparing for the hardest battle, facing her children. She understood that any words of justification were meaningless without an admission of responsibility, and responsibility here was not just about finding guilt on the surface but also about the moment she had chosen to trust a man like Joey's solution. She remembered the horror of seeing the signs that Doug had been pushed against an invisible wall, twisted by debts of favors and unwritten commitments. She had thought a private negotiation might slow the wheels, that a nod from Joey would open a temporary escape hatch for the family. That naivety had now become the heaviest moral condemnation. She paced her dark room each night like a cornered animal, wondering if the courage needed at that moment was to cut all ties rather than find a compromise, wondering if she had chosen silence and retreated, the tragedy would have come later or in some other, more brutal form. Marcel was overwhelmed, and as the search warrants loomed, he began to respond to the instincts of a wounded predator. Burn bridges, destroy evidence, change his tune. In the chaos, evidence he had thought would never be pieced together like broken pottery quietly fell into place. A seemingly innocuous string of text messages turns out to contain contradictory timelines. A rental car's GPS device reveals a circuitous route to the scene, and a cash payment the night before the crash matches the amount mentioned in an anonymous note by an anonymous witness. The pieces form the shape of a plan that's imperfect but brutal enough to kill and blame it on chance. Each line of data pushes Joey closer to the edge, his smile still visible in social photos but his eyes beginning to hollow. Fairmont Crest, with its long hallways and ancestral portraits, becomes a silent witness to a war between legacy and betrayal. Every armchair bears the mark of some past misstep. Every chandelier reflects new lines drawn in the present. Family meetings lose their civility when juxtaposed with rumors of hidden accounts and undated powers of attorney. Marcus calculated the stakes, hiding his panic behind old strategies. But Darnell wouldn't let anyone resort to the usual blinders. He kept at it, not exploding, not screaming, just silently putting things back in their place. In that silence was a lingering accusation that too many people had seen things approaching disaster but had chosen to stand aside for convenience or fear. The question of Deanna hung in the air like a lightning bolt that hadn't yet touched the ground. Her absence was both a pause and a threat to all those who thought they could control the story. No one knew when she would walk through the door, what she would bring. Forgiveness, proof, another wound to the family. Vanessa woke every morning with a sinking heart, thinking of the moment she'd met her daughter's eyes, of being interrogated with silence instead of words. She practiced standing up straight in front of the mirror, stripping herself of her excuses to the pure confirmation that she had made the choices, and now she would make other choices to face. As the press surrounded her, as Marcel's indictment approached, as Joey's lawyers threw out new smokescreens of harmless deals and chance encounters, Vanessa decided to turn her anger into discipline. She handed over everything she had, opened the safe, opened the server, opened the drawers of forgotten photos. No longer a widow hiding behind a veil of mourning, she stepped forward as the plaintiff of an uncomfortable truth. The family tragedy would no longer be explained by accident, and the name Doug would no longer be a shield for those who used the image of the dead to manipulate the living. She forced herself to tell Darnell everything that needed to be said, nothing less, nothing more, preparing herself for disappointment or righteous anger, because only then could a mother-daughter relationship have a chance of being rebuilt on a foundation of honesty instead of a web of lies. Doug's death, from a startling news story, becomes a test for all who live in the shadow of Fairmont Crest. Joey must learn to fear what he despised, the honest fragments that cannot be bought when they are put together. Marcel must hear the sound of handcuffs as a death knell for all the excuses he used to lull his conscience to sleep. Marcus must examine the way he used his relatives as pawns and reassess the assets that could become moral prison walls. Darnell must move past his grief and avoid becoming a cruel replica of the men he wanted to expose, forcing himself to maintain a measure of humanity so that when the truth is revealed, he will still have something to live for. And Vanessa must choose the only thing that matters. Responsibility does not wait for a convenient time. It only requires someone to stand up and pay the price, so that from the ashes, a new order can be formed, not clean but clear, not peaceful but fairer. Fairmont Crest will never be the same again, and perhaps that is the only reliable starting point. When the storm season is over, the wood will crack, the glass will shatter, and the walls will remember the sounds of long nights chasing evidence. But in the rubble, those who remain know that the only thing that will save them from repeating Doug's death in some other form is to stop calling betrayal by beautiful words, stop calling cowardly compromise by cleverness. The truth does not excuse the damage done, but it pulls the curtain back from those who have lived in the shadows for too long. And if there is any legacy left for Doug's children to cling to, it is a pledge not written in ink but carved in scars. From now on, every decision will be made in the light, even when the light stings, because only then will anger find its way out, and broken hearts learn to beat again in a rhythm free of lies. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I make is just speculation and personal sharing. If you find the video interesting and useful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments section for everyone to discuss. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Sincerely, thank you.